Welcome back to Season 2 of Tools of Fighter Pilots, the show where we translate high-performance aviation into decision-making tools. I am TC, and I'll be your host. Sometimes the environment changes gradually, sometimes it changes overnight, airspace closes, routes shift, and decisions that normally take weeks must suddenly be taken in minutes. When that happens, leaders face pressure at the same time. Incomplete information, compressed time, consequences beyond the immediate decision. For Season 2 of Fighter Pilots, we made a promise to focus on tools to use when the plan stops working. And that is not unusual in a fighter pilot's environment. My guest today is someone who has operated inside the reality for decades. Commander Mario Ferrante flew the F-104 with the 23 Squadron, joined the Frecce Tricolori, the Italian Aerobatic team, and became solo. Then came back to the squadron, flying F-16s, where he was the commander when I left and became an instructor on Typhoon. He then spent years flying Canadairs in wildfire operations, another environment where the situation evolves faster than the plan. Mario, welcome to the show.
Thank you much. I have to call you TC, Futre, Tommaso, what I have to do. Okay, thank you much.
Whatever works for you.
Okay, I'm so honored. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Mario, let's dive in right away. As we said, actionable tools. So let's imagine a situation where something significant changes suddenly and plans are disrupted. We've seen it happening lately a lot. Information is partial. People around you start reacting emotionally. And from your experience, what are the first things that an experienced pilot like you does in the first 5 minutes? Not theory, we're talking about action.
Basically, I want to control the formation, or maybe the crew members' emotional state. I want to gain their attentions and immediately assess if the situation is time sensitive. If you need to do something immediately, or you have minutes or hours to do, in the organization maybe. So rapidly, I want to assess immediate facts, what happened, and what we are up to. Evaluate, of course, in between the team, all possible options, and sort between them the best applicable. Start with the plan. If I need, and it's something that I used to do it, delegate and prioritize tasks. So you need to do first this and then that. But above all, you need to communicate effectively. And the last thing is you want to evaluate the plan and reassess and make correction if needed.
It's something that we talk many times during our career, no? First of all, wings level, no? Maintain aircraft control, analyze situation, take preparation, and land as conditions permit. It's kind of automatic, but sometimes the situation is evolving with something that I call the cognitive avalanche. I did some research. It's not really like a scientific topic, but the reality is, the threshold of the noise is high, information keeps arriving, and assumptions multiply, and people start reacting instead of thinking. And in aviation, we are trained to interrupt this kind of spiral. Why? Because we're looking always to have our situational awareness high. I wrote in this article, when the skies are turbulent. What techniques do you personally use in the cockpit, or to reset your thinking before making a decision?
Things I want to highlight something that you said. Even if you are constantly in the loop, doing the cross-checking, you're doing a stylized approach. A minimum of startle effect happens always in the cockpit. Even if you are a single seat, you are in a multi-crew environment. Even in an organization, if something happens, so people wants to, or they are stuck, or maybe they want to jump into decision. What we use, since I find into the civilian aviation, there is it's called TDODAR, or FORDEC. It's an acronym. So T stands for time. How much time I have to make a decision? Is it immediate danger? Minutes, hours? So this give you an help to prioritize actions and prevent you to overthinking. The first D stands for diagnose. So what exactly is happening? Just state the name properly of the emergency, of the abnormal, of the crisis. Identify symptoms and what you know for certain. Even if it's partial information, we don't care. We just want to have it. We keep it, but we want to avoid assumptions. O stands for options. What are your possible actions? Make a quick list and even do nothing could be an option, very rarely, but could be an option. And sometimes stabilize the system, the formation, or the organization as a first move. The second D stands for decide. Pick the option that, after discussing with your team inside the formation and commit to it, okay? Act, of course, put in actions and in their actions what you would just decide. As we said before, the TDODAR is not a linear process, it's a closed loop. So basically reassess if needed. Just make corrections and steer the system, the formation, or your single airplane to another directions.
Yeah, this is really interesting because we start from a model that comes from perception, comprehension, and projection. Fighter pilots will be using different type of things. When I started instructing on Typhoon, we had perception, analysis, decision, and then action. No, and it works not only for you as a leader, but it also works in the moment that you are seeing your team players doing it, so that you can see when this loop is disrupted. And in a crisis, you need to, as you said, prioritize. That's why we use a risk matrix for ability of something to happen, and then what happens when it happens. And obviously, in high-stake environments, creativity under pressure is not really an option. You flew as a solo on the Frecce Tricolori, and the margin for improvisation was really zero. Thousands of people are watching, the maneuver is unfolding, and the timing must be exact. So what does the experience teach you about trusting procedures when pressure is extremely high and extremely visible?
Well, I think this flies as a solo, or maybe you can assume the same thing in other organization as a leader, where you have all the pressures on you because you need to prove, you need to give results. As a solo is a pure test of human and procedural limits. And as you said in the intro, procedures is your only anchor. Because when you have a lot of pressure, you might want to do something different, to astonish people. And but in reality, procedures exist for only one reason: because it's proven they work every time. Because that maneuvers train to do it a lot of time, 1,000 times with that parameters. And are you sure that you're gonna have a successful execution? So basically you want to stick with those. And procedures also are done to contain risk. We are talking about creativity. Creativity, you can have it just in the planning phase. Yeah, you can, what you're doing, you want to train, you want to do something, but then when you're acting, you are in the displaying in operational, in combat, in your organization. There's no time for creativity. You just stick to the plan. And then maybe you can reassess, as we said, but it's not time to be creative. Why I'm saying that? Because SOPs or plan is the difference. Follow them is the difference with a success and disaster. So I'll give you a quick example if I have time. I was doing as a solo. I was doing the bombast crossing. Basically, I screw up something with the timings, and I was ahead of time. And it's a dangerous situation because you're gonna cross the formation while still close, and you don't want to do it, of course. But I was already in the vertical 90 degrees. You cannot do nothing because even if you abort the maneuver, you go barely with the formation, so you don't see anything. And even the formations open up the bomb. and they give you the belly. So basically, belly against belly, no one see each other's. So it's a very dangerous situation. And SOP is what he said, what I've been trained for. He said, hey, if something happens like that, you just aim, it's a little bit a larger formation, just aim the tail of number one and just cross it, as close as you can. And that's what I did. And the funny things, that's why I'm saying that the different SOPs is the difference between success and disaster, because when we were on the ground doing the debrief, the wingman or the other wingman said, "Hey Mario, it was fantastic this pass." And I said this, and I said, "Yes, the first time, the last time that you see it." But basically, it was a success. But actually, we came close to this to be a disaster. I mean, it was good enough to be here and talking with you guys.
Adhering to SOPs and procedures is part of the discipline that we learn. So discipline in that situation gave you the clarity, mental clarity to execute what it was the contingency. So it's already introducing my other topic, which is switching from plan A to plan B. So when the plans stop working, because we made mistakes and the variables are many. Sometimes you cannot control all the variables. So, timing, you're just pulling the G's a little bit earlier, or you accelerate a little bit quicker. What we learn is that in dynamic environments, sometimes these original plans stop working. But not because they were wrong, we said, but because the situation evolved differently. So in aviation, how do we recognize the moment when it's time to abandon the original plan and shift to another course? Because you said, okay, we have this one, but there is a kind of a time frame or prioritization that is in your workload, in your thinking. Say, okay, I need to abandon what I'm doing, and that's something the leaders, they get stuck. They are in tunnel vision, and they get stuck to that plan until it's too late to change to the plan B.
Well, actually, there are two things, in my opinion. The workload give you, and of course, as all plans, you want to set risk thresholds. So basically, high workload is not a failure for the system, for the formation, for the pilot. For me, it's a signal. It's signal that you need to change something. When you or your crew or your organization cannot manage everything safely, that's a cue. That's time to leave and steer the boat. A rule of thumb, if the reality is diverging from your assumption faster than you can handle it, it's time to reassess. It's time to do something differently. And then, as I said, the second thing is to establish and recognize that you are assaulting risk thresholds, safety margins. If something threatening these margins, like you are approaching too fast to terrain, you are on a unstable approach, too fast or maybe too high, no gear, no flaps, or you're busting your fuel reserve. It's a trigger. All of these are triggers. So you need a plan change. And in your mind, of course, you need to have contingency. If something happens, if this occurs, just switch to plan B. I was a flight ops manager in the Canadair, and after 25 years, we had a lot of hull, the bottom part of the amphibious aircraft, damaged, during scooping because crew always facing sea state a little bit aggressive. Basically, the FMs of the aircraft says just you can afford up to 1 meter's height of wave. But a 70, 80 knots scooping on the water, how can you measure it 1 meters? So a lot of damage, even before the wildfire season. So, and in 25 years of Canada and Italy, didn't one thought about a tool to avoid this situation and make the crew member decide if to leave or not the spot. And I brought it from our experience as a fighter pilot, as we said. When we build the hostile decoration matrix, if is happening this, okay, you have an hostile. Same thing. I said, okay, let's do this. 5 situations. If you have, a single wave above an average, large use of controls, excessive use of power, 3 or more waves on the shores, and lateral crosswind approaching the limit of the aircraft. If 3 of these are met, leave. It's a good tool that we can bring out of our pilot experience, to build up metrics and help you to steer eventually the system in a new direction. I mean, in a much more safer environment.
I think it comes down also to something you talked about just earlier, the margin that you set. We did a flight safety course, and this is something, the margin theory that they teach you, especially when you become an instructor, but also when you are a young pilot. Set your own margin, because it's kind of a bubble which is basically shrinking the more that you become experienced, but there is some point that you cannot go beyond that margin, because otherwise flight safety. So that's why you set all these risk matrix, all these prioritizations, let's say, where certain condition, if then else, it's met, that's it. Yeah, true. Let's apply something to commander perspective. We start as a wingman, so I have a great story that I like to tell all the times, because we have seen an Air Force that was kind of different from what it is right now. But I remember when you were the commander at the squadron, I was about to leave, and I still have like several months, but in many organizations, you become an asset that is leaving the squadron, so you're not going to be an asset anymore. And egoistically think about, well, this guy is not an asset for me anymore, so I cannot give him courses or, advancement in the career. So the opportunities are postponed, and but you push me to do the instructor course first, and then you send me to the TLP, one of the biggest exercise that makes you mission commander. And when I thanked you when I left, you said, okay, you gave the squadron what you had to give. Now the squadron is giving to you. We are even, no big deal. But it's not something that I've seen very often. Okay, if you read the book that I speak a lot of times from Tamara Mai's Meaningful Work, this is something that scientifically proven organization become much more effective, much more, let's say, it's good to live in this kind of organization because people live better. And honestly, how do you think about leadership in this kind of situation?
You need to be what I call an enlarged cockpit CRM. We are all a team. Yeah, you are in. As you said, you start as a wingman, and you ramp up, and then you hopefully you become a leader, and you just wanna involve. You want to take into consideration everyone into consideration, and when something happens, you need to you should show yourself as a leader. I mean, I got a little bit emotional when you said that. I forgot it, and
yeah, it was good. It was a good party. Yeah, because it was the flight. It was with Fabrizio that was leaving as well. Salvatore was leaving as well, so it was like a lot of emotions after many years in the 20th Square.
Excellent. Basically, that's I connect this to what I say. And when something happens as a leader, you wanna stay composed. You wanna control your emotional states, because as a leader, everybody was watching at you, and maybe sometimes emotional can be contagious. The second things, if people see you calm and measure, you stabilize the environment, you stabilize the entire system. Of course, with them, you wanna communicate as clear as possible. You don't want to add much more noise, fear, speculations, on that systems, because these are the first drivers of organizational tensions, in the squadron, in any organization. You are the one that set the pace. As a leader, you are the one that set the pace. You have to, because even if there are tensions, tensions accelerate activity, and so decision can get rushed, mistakes can happen, and so basically as a good leader, you wanna slow the tempo. Yeah, you are the one that gives the, as a formation leader, it gives the check-in, you give updates. It's easy for us, in the cockpit. You just put the throttle back, and that gives you a bunch of time to think about options. You wanna set the right pace for the exact situations. As a leader, I mean, people need you to see you engaged. You have to be visible, even if run into the corridor, just stop people and try to be present, because visibility reduce the uncertainty in the people, shows that someone in the team is in control.
Presence in the organization, presence in the team as a leader, let's say force multiplier, because it's also stimulating. It's one of those motivational behaviors that it's hidden, but is working. Sometimes I publish clips where we'll be talking about with some guests about the leadership, the weaknesses of the leadership. Showing weaknesses is not a big problem, because you're showing that you're human, and so people can access to you a little bit more naturally. They feel like they are on the same level, so that it's easing a little bit communication. But sometimes I see some comments of leaders, and they say, well, you shouldn't be showing too much weakness as a leader. So it's kind of something that you said in terms of weaknesses. What do you think about showing that you failed, showing that you made a mistake? Is that something that is detrimental for the leadership?
No, absolutely. As I said, you are a human, but and you have to show people. Yeah, you are at that moment. You are on top of the organizations or the team, and of course you are in charge. You have a responsibility, but that doesn't make you, a god, a god of earth. So you have to involve people, and that means that even if you don't have the big solutions, you have maybe the initial one, but as long as you are there and you are giving them the first tasks to start, working on the problem, and keep you busy, keep them busy. They want to see. For me, it's very important. They want to see someone in control, even if you failed or maybe you were wrong. Just tell it, because they want to. You're giving a say to the system. Of course, having partial information or doing something wrong, it can happen. But we have been trained, and I know this is one of the tools that I take with me forever. I will take forever from the Air Force. I say, partial information is normal to do it. You have to deal with it.
And talking about partial information, you spent many years in wildfire operations, as you said, with the Canadair, which it introduced a complete different environment from the one that you knew from the Air Force. The winds are shifting and visibility changes, and the fires are evolving. Terrain is really a factor. What did that environment teach you about maintaining situational awareness when conditions are constantly evolving?
Firefighting operations it's very close and very similar to QRA, because you get scrambled, you run to your airplane, and with very few informations, just basically a target, some meteo informations, and actually you really don't know what you're gonna face. And about SA, in this kind of environments, that situational awareness is a dynamic. It's not static. It's not something that it remains as a single snapshot when you arrive into the arena. No, it is always changing. So there are 2 points of view that I want to highlight. It's the safety part. So basically, you want in that environment, you want to keep an adequate energy to outmaneuver obstacles in case of failure of your aircraft, and it's much more safer than to have. It's much more important than to have 100% of drop accuracy. No matter what, I tell you this, it's better to screw up a drop instead of hit something, so because you go 100 feet, 100 knots. On the operational perspective, as I said, is dynamic, not static, because, as in the intro, you said that wildfire, the fire change, every seconds because of winds, because of smokes. And so you need to update your mental model, every pattern, from water to fire. Anticipation is very important, as much as the observation, I would like to say, because, there are some fires, very fast. So basically, sometimes, the best drop, I'm going to tell you this, the best drop is 50% on green and 50% of the footprint, 50% on green and 50% on black. But you are facing a very faster fires. So maybe you want to go 100% on green, because so in that case, the fires goes into the wet part of the footprint. Basically, you learn to ask yourself, with the current situations, where the fires goes, where do I have to approach it? I mean, the canyon. So it's a constant preemptive adjustment that you have to do it on your operations.
If you think about the OODA loop of John Boyd, we use it in combat, but the reality you can use in every dynamic environment, because the quicker you loop this process, then the easier it is to take decisions. And when life is in danger as well, it works. Unstable environments, leaders often feel enormous urgency. Okay, so right now we can see that the world is really evolving, and leaders, okay, there is urgency to take decision, but it doesn't really produce automatically clarity in the moment that you're taking decisions if you don't have all the elements, like we said. So from your experience, what is the most dangerous mistake the leaders make when they feel pressure to act? With Damien in the previous episode, and it's like, leaders sometimes they take decision too quickly. It doesn't mean that they were the best decisions. What is the most dangerous mistake?
Once I think that they want to take a decision because you need the feel to do something immediately. If you don't do something, you feel wrong. Or maybe sometimes do nothing for the very quick, the very initial moments could be an option to stabilize. Taking decision with incomplete understanding of the problem can drive you to even worse situations, and even also early assumption. Sometimes you get locked in, as you said, focus on that, and maybe the following steps are just done to justify what just decided. And also, there are some leaders that confuse speed with effectiveness. Faster doesn't mean better. Plus, you're gonna overload the system. You take a wrong decision because you are rushed. Instead of stabilizing a crisis, you can even amplify the chaos. Action driven by urgency, of course, reduce your anxiety as a leader, but the action driven by clarity solves the problem.
3 key takeaways here are: build your tactical picture, build your situation awareness by analyzing all the elements first. Then go through your risk matrix, your prioritization to take the decisions. And then after you've taken the decision, close the loop and start over again. This is what you talked about, the TDODAR, about the risk matrix. We talked about the margin. We talked about having all the elements in order to take the decision with clarity, not only with urgency. I've been talking in Tools of Fighter Pilots about fighter pilots non-negotiables: be on time, be prepared, structure and checklist, assertive communication, control the controllable. And this is a kind of a framework that I like to use, especially when the environment is unstable. If you had to translate those ideas into 3 practical actions a leader should take during a crisis, what would they be?
Well, of course, if something shows up, first, call a crisis meeting. In every organization, there's a crisis plan. There will be a crisis plan where roles are already decided and checklists, that means actions that are already assigned. So, and just make a simple plan. As we said before, you don't want to give the entire solution. You want to just give, the first step to take. And of course, in that occasion, just stress the use of checklists, stress the SOP, so that their work and the work of the system, the formation or the cabin is simplified. Okay, you don't want to solve the crisis immediately. You want to be clear, you want to be assertive, and actually you want to state clearly what is happening, not hiding. Even if we had a failure, we just state even the failure. What matters now, but you want to state clearly what is matters now, and what the team should do, and then set regular updates, because as we said, they want to see and want to have constant say, and they want to see you engaged into the problem. Speed matters, clarity matters more than speed. And then I will take your tool, controllable. You want to identify very few variables in the crisis that actually matters in the very initial moments, and then act only on those, step by step. I want to stress this point, step by step. Ignore what actually you cannot influence. If you're not able to steer, don't lose your energy, because you and your team are going to lose energy to work something that is just chaos. Maybe focus on that very items that you can I will say can influence in the very first part of the crisis.
Bing Campbell used to say, have a look at the elephant in the boardroom. Times we don't see the bigger problem, the bigger issue there. You spoke about communication. Assertive communication is key for a leader, is key for a team to rotate, to act properly. And when uncertainty spreads through an organization, communication becomes crucial, critical. People don't necessarily need perfect answers, okay? But they need direction. From your experience as a commander, what should leaders communicate in moments where the situation is still developing? You spoke about stabilizing the system, and that's something. But let's give an example.
I call it the 5 whiskey. Basically, you should communicate what we know, what we don't know, what we are doing, what you need from the people, and when they're gonna hear you again. So basically, what we know, and you wanna be explicit about what is the situation, what is confirmed, and even if that is incomplete, you have a partial information. It anchors people to reality, and avoid to hide, but at the opposite side, avoid also to dress up the things. Okay, you don't want chaos. You tell them also what we don't know, and it's pretty normal. Say, hey, we don't know yet. These things shows honesty from your side, and reduce speculation from your people, okay? And but also give you an idea, give them signals that the next decision are being made after an heavy and a peaky troubleshooting, and not just instinctively, reactively. You want to tell actually what we are doing now, because people need to see action and trust you, even outline the action that's been taken, even if they are provisional. Actually, just giving the brief and just say, hey, we are assessing the situation. We already deployed some resources there and assigned some tasks there. Food and costs have been tasked to do this, okay? So people knows who is doing what. Also, you have to specify what you want from them, what you need as a leader from your team. So give simple, actionable direction. That helps people to stay focused on their priorities, so they ignore what is non-critical. And of course, give them also an open door to escalate to you, or maybe even an higher level, to the top management, any specific issues that they face. They cannot solve problem, and your door that must be always open for any issue that they are going to face. And you have to stress that. And then, as the last part of a briefing, when you communicate with your information, the meeting with next update will be at 12Z. They still engage in a closed loop, and they know that they're going to have an update for sure, so they even confident in what they're doing.
I like this idea of giving agency to people through communication. Obviously, you start where your communication is not that great. Okay, it's part of the process. If you have been trained, if you have been delegated certain task, then obviously it's easier for you the moment that you become a leader. Another thing that nowadays in these turbulent skies his perspective, how you can keep the big picture, how can you be lined up with what will happen in the future. You are perceiving what is happening, you are comprehending now how you project. So in aviation, we often say that situational awareness is not just what is happening now, it's about understanding what's going to happen next. So how does experience help a leader maintain perspective when everyone is focused on acting on urgency and acting on immediate problem? Now you're following steps, but as a leader, you know what is the end game, you know what is the long-term plan.
I don't know if it's used only in Italy, but maybe it's worldwide. As experienced leader has seen this movie before. That's the statement that we use. Basically, experience give you a wider box, as I said, a wider box with a higher number of options. Maybe as a wingman you have a small boxes. As a leader you have a wider boxes because you already lived the situation. Maybe it's not the exact one that you are living in the present, but it's something similar. So basically, you starting thinking of the second and third order effect of your actions. So what you want to do? You want to do a partial step back. You want to see the bigger picture, and that's give you the idea and the feeling to be engaged enough to understand if you are one step away, but detach enough also to give you not the pressure and give you the chance to think. So what I call is the emotional detachment without disengagement. This half step of distance that you give to the situations. The other thing is that experienced leader have is the high tolerance to uncertainty. And that's the big, always the assumption in our environment, especially in the combat or maybe in the aviation, but it's even in management situation as well. But this higher tolerance to uncertainty give you the confidence to give direction as well. You are trained to do it, and because this looks like this is something I've already seen. And if it shifts to that, okay, let's steer the boat in this way, okay? The difference is that while the other people get lucky in the first interpretation, you can you have a bunch of options and you have the flexibility to change your mind, to change directions.
Mario, we're getting to the end of the episode. This was a pretty good ride into memory lane, even though promise that we made for season 2 is to give actionable tools. So if tomorrow someone found themselves responsible for a team, leading a team through unstable and uncertain times, situations where the environment is changing faster than the plan, what is the one tool that you'll apply first?
Yeah, let's do a mashup and just give a statement. As I would say, control the controllable. So I will come up to your tools. Control the controllable with emotional attachment and a high tolerance to uncertainty. The meaning is don't rush, don't jump immediately into the problem. Don't create extra chaos. Take your time, half distance away from the situation. Highlight your options, and only when you have discussed with the team, just start giving clear and direct communications.
What emerges from this conversation is that crisis management is not about heroic reactions. It is about preparation, structure, and disciplined thinking when the environment becomes unstable. Fighter pilots are trained to operate inside uncertainty, not because they enjoy chaos, but because they learn how to create clarity when this disappears. Mario, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us on Tools of Fighter Pilots. To the next one.
Thank you for the invitation. Ciao.